as the 60th anniversary fast approaches, me and Ben have been taking a look back to 10 years ago, some events from the 50th anniversary. We've touched on the return of 9 missing Doctor Who episodes, and we've also looked back at Big Finish's 50th anniversary story, The Light at the End. Now we're doing it again for An Adventure in Space and Time because that has reached 10 years old on the day this video uploads. And that was something rather special to have, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was magical that sort of Thursday night, 9 o'clock, BBC Two, and sort of it really puts into perspective how of a troubled start of Doctor Who has and how it's always been fighting for its survival, and proving that it's the little show that could.
Yeah. And how like weird and wild some of its ideas actually are and were. Because because Doctor Who is now so ingrained in the public culture, you sort of take for granted how bizarre the whole time traveling police telephone box is. Because that's just a random bit of 60s iconography that was on the street corners that's suddenly being thrown through space and time. Nowadays, we just imagine it as something that does go through space and time. It's almost weird to imagine them as something on street corners, isn't it?
Yeah,
And so it's funny to have this story that takes us back to that time and shows you how many weird and wonderful ideas got poured into, as you say, the little show that could. It
I mean,
was very much a passion project from Mark Gatiss as well, wasn't it? And I think that shows in the end
yeah,
result.
it's a love letter to everyone who founded the show, everyone
Mm.
behind it, really.
Yeah, so many wonderful cameos in there. I've got, I mean, the standouts being William Russell and Carol Ann Ford for their bits, particularly William Russell. And I mean, it's wonderful that with his scene in particular, it's not just a cameo for the sake of a cameo. It does serve as a strong introduction to Sidney Newman's character within this as well. He's someone who's new at the BBC, who's shaking up the way they do things. And
Mm.
so, with him not showing the pass, and you got,
The old guard, as it
yeah,
were.
mm, you got the that's not the way we do things at the BBC line. You know, it's so many strong, profound moments like that that really do, you know, a lot of the legwork for this story and these characters. They are introduced so well. And that's what you say characters because, these are like adaptations of real people at the same time.
Yes.
But it's a docudrama. It does take some liberties with history in some ways just to make,
Dramatic
them,
effects.
yeah, more compelling drama. You know, sometimes things aren't as neat as they may seem. And certainly, you know, it's interesting how this chooses to chart the history of Doctor Who from its inception to the 10th planet, the first Doctor era. But it is, you know, at the first, it's much more about Verity
Hmm.
and her struggle within that to get this show off the ground. But, is she necessarily the main character? Because she, by necessity, has to disappear two-thirds of the way through the plot.
And then it
And
becomes a William Hartnell story, doesn't it?
but I think that adds to the loneliness he is shown to be feeling towards, the end of his run,
Mm.
where so many of the people he had grown fond of and close to throughout those early years of the show have now gone. And so, to have them when they leave the show, they leave the story entirely. It does make that punch be felt that much more in your gut.
Yeah.
And I mean, speaking of gut punches, I think the music really helps the emotional weight this docudrama has.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
Very whimsical as well at times, but yeah, it just hits all the right notes when it needs to. And I think that the piece at the end where you've got William Hartnell himself,
Of a
you know,
new
doing
Doctor,
the
I think it's called.
fair, like that hits very hard. And that's wonderful throughout the whole thing. And I mean, the faithful recreation of the 60s setting within this as well.
I think that's the thing what really blows your mind of how intricate every detail is.
Mm. I love the fog swept scenery as well you get at times. Like
Especially
that.
that sort of police box with like William Hartnell in his car and you've got the policeman coming up. Like that's such a gorgeous image.
Brilliant way to open the story, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mm. Ah, yeah, I mean, it's something special. It's something we as Doctor Who fans aren't necessarily used to having, is it? It's something quite different from the norm here. But I think, it was perfect to get done for this 50th anniversary. I think, didn't Mark Gatiss even have the plan and desire to do it for the 40th? But it never quite got off the ground, presumably because Doctor Who just wasn't in the public consciousness as much then.
Yeah, I think
I,
so. I think it's been a long sort of passion project for him.
yeah, and then that was finally the excuse to get it properly made. I mean, what are your memories of the run up to it as well? Like, do you remember the announcement of it?
I remember seeing bits of it at Comic Con because bits
Oh,
were leaking. Same with the Day of the Doctor trailer, actually. Because you had David Bradley there as well, and they had like a glimpse of it, and that. And I remember seeing actually filming photos back in March 2013 of the Daleks on Westminster Bridge. That
uh,
was quite exciting seeing that. Um, and just seeing classic Daleks.
yeah. I mean, for me, I was sort of like just getting back into Doctor Who around the summer of 2013 on the build up to the 50th anniversary, and particularly classic Who at that time. So I sort of missed the whole announcement of this and such. So when I first saw that picture of David Bradley as William Hartnell as the first Doctor, I didn't quite know what this was really. I was sort of like left wondering, is an Adventure in Time like some one-off story they're doing with a recast first Doctor and such? But no, I then as I more looked into it, realised what it in actuality was, this docudrama about the beginning of the show. And yeah, it's a wonderful concept, isn't it? And as you said, it is something different from the norm. You have a bit more swearing, I suppose, within this.
Yeah,
It's
piss and
slightly
vinegar,
more
as it
adult.
were.
Mm. Yeah, never anything too full on. It's never anything too adult, but certainly,
It's not doing
we
like a Torchwood. It's not putting it in there
nah,
because hey,
nah.
we're adult.
Yeah, it's doing it just to add a bit of gravity. I mean, you've got the assassination of Kennedy in there as well. Sort of, you certainly got the gun and such, and it's wonderful how that is paralleled with Sydney reading the script for the Daleks, like and the comparison between the scope of the rifle and the Dalek eye stalk. That is, uh, yeah, rather inspired, I'd say.
Hmm.
That's-
It almost felt, I don't want to say more advanced for the TV show at the time, but it felt more advanced with the TV show, the creative ideas of it,
Mm,
really.
I think you could tell that this versus Day of the Doctor, this is Mark Gattis's passion project. This is something he has been working on, dreaming up for a good while. It's arguably better than any of Mark Gattis's scripts for the TV show. And I say that as someone who's quite a big fan of a lot of his
Yeah.
TV stories, but I think this is something above even those. Whereas Stephen Moffat was in quite a difficult position with Day of the Doctor. He had the turmoil of Series 7 that nearly broke him. He had Sherlock going on at the same time. And so this sort of, by, that comparison, was able to stand a bit stronger, I would say, as a production. And also, it does serve as a wonderful tribute to those early years, not just the early years of the show itself, but the pioneers who were able to give this to us. And I think certainly through very much highlighting Waris Hussein in there as well, it's sort of showing Doctor Who pushing boundaries even back then by having first female producer at the BBC, first Indian director at the BBC. And that was rather wonderful how this story doesn't shy away from that. It puts them front and center. Yeah, and quite rightly points that out itself. It doesn't just leave the audience to work that out. It is telling you how wonderful a fact that is, and how that is necessary to mix things up, get away from these stuffy old farts who are clogging up the BBC bar.
Well, it just shows the past as a foreign place as well, doesn't it?
I mean, it's now nearly 60 years ago rather than 50 when this first came out. So that's just wild. It's wild when you see, like, the young girl playing Hartnell's granddaughter as well, and thinking, she must have sat her GCSEs by now, the actress. Like that. Yeah, it's wild how time flies. I think, especially when you put things like that in that context. Yeah, I mean, it's all just a wonderful little 85 minutes, isn't it? About
83 or something like that.
Yeah, hour 20 minute, hour 23 minutes. So yeah, it's something special, and
it's a roller coaster of so many highs and lows, isn't it?
It's a tragedy, really, isn't it? The tragedy of William Hartnell.
It's always sort of Shakespearean, isn't it? The sort of descent.
But you have magical moments in there as well, like him in the park with the children.
Yeah.
I think there's a twinkle to this story, but it doesn't pull its punches emotionally either.
Oh, it hits you, and I always get hit by when we see Matt Smith. And it's sort of that thing what Carol Ann Ford sort of saying, but Bill knew that this would go on and on. And I think it's a lovely way of going, look, you might be going, but the show will continue. I think it's rather beautiful.
Yeah, and continue it has, because we're now at 60 years of it, or very nearly. So that is a wonderful thing. And again, a wonderful tribute to those early pioneers who got it off the ground through very shaky circumstances. It shows you how often it was on a razor's edge, which way would it fall? And luckily for us, it did continue. It survived many swings of the axe to get to where it is today, and long may it continue, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, how often do you stick this one on, though? Because I feel like it's something I don't revisit nearly as much as I should. But again, maybe it is made more special by not overdoing it. I don't know. How about you?
I rewatched it a fair bit in 2017.
Oh, okay. Was that on the build up to Twice Upon a Time?
Yeah.
That's understandable.
But yeah, it's one of those things where you watch it and you're reminded of how much of a brilliant piece of television it is.
Yeah, it's just
it's like
so
an
many
unearthly
strong
child.
moments.
You've got to save it for the anniversary.
Yeah, that's it, really. And so revisiting it for the 60th anniversary did feel quite right and special. I mean, if you haven't stuck it on yet, I'd certainly recommend you do so. Revisit this little gem from 10 years ago now, because the time is right. Or maybe you're waiting for the Daleks in colour so you can watch the repeat that follows that. Because, yeah, it's on BBC4, isn't it?
Have Shooty in it.
Yeah, who knows? We'll have to wait and see. Yeah, they might be doing a follow-up video on this to
Mm.
say, Chuchi's in it now. They've updated it.
Yeah, yeah. Which I think maybe was like the intention all along.
I think there was certainly talk of that a while back, wasn't there? The idea, especially with it being green screened in.
Yeah.
They've got that original footage about Matt Smith. They can stick any doctor in there they like. So maybe they will. Maybe it's a little surprise for those who sit down to watch it live after the Daleks in color. But yeah, let us know what you think. Can you believe it's been 10 years?
No.
Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Leave a like as well. Subscribe too if you've enjoyed this video. And we'll see you all with another video very soon, I'm sure. Take care, everyone.
Bye bye.